Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I warmly welcome you all to the Satin Creditcare Network Limited earnings conference call to discuss the operating and financial performance for the quarter ended June 30th, 2020. I hope you are all doing well and staying safe during these testing times. To start with, during the quarter, the Board of Directors of the company considered and approved the fundraising by way of the rights issue of 1,99,82,667 equity shares of the company to eligible equity shareholders of the company in the ratio of 48:125. The issue was priced at rupees 60 per share, with rupees 15 per share to be paid at the time of application. It gives me great pleasure to share that our issue was oversubscribed and the proceeds will be used by the company to strengthen its capital base and is the confidence capital to all the shareholders. Now coming to the microfinance industry, the industry has witnessed healthy growth over the years, notwithstanding issues like liquidity crunch, heavy floods in some states, nationwide protests, Assam crisis and now the pandemic. The quarter gone by has been challenging for all microfinance players, and we being part of this ecosystem also witnessed challenges. Across the industry, disbursement and collection activities were majorly at a halt for the most part of the quarter due to nationwide lockdowns until May 2020, when things started to stabilize with staggered lifting up of lockdown restrictions. Despite these challenges, we have managed to grow our AUM by 14% to rupees 8,119 crores Y-on-Y. We acknowledge these unprecedented situations, but despite these testing times, we have kept our fundamentals strong and are focused on setting up right systems and processes. We have adopted this new normal and have undertaken several new initiatives to adopt new technologies and digital solutions in all our functions for more efficient and effective working environment, which in turn will help us provide higher customer satisfaction. One such initiative is the launch of our new customer service app, which will help us increase digital and financial awareness among customers and help them connect with brand Satin while enabling cashless collection. We have also launched a new product called Pragati Loan, where the main purpose is to rebuild borrowers' income generation activities impacted majorly due to COVID-19. We are continuously engaging with our customers, employees and field staff, and now with lockdown restrictions being lifted in major parts of the country and economic activities progressing towards normalcy, we are getting progressive responses both on collection and disbursement activities with each passing day. As we are aware that conducting center meetings for collection activity was majorly at halt due to lockdown restrictions in major towns and cities of the country, customers were encouraged to pay their installments through various digital apps like Google Pay, Phone app and Paytm. Also, our staffs are in touch with our borrowers and we are undertaking tele-collection activity by CSS in COVID-19 containment zones. In addition to this, we are nearing to add Satin on Bharat Bill Payment System, which is a one-stop solution by NPCI for recurring payments and also under process of taking customer activation for regular collections via NASH and eNASH through bank accounts. We expect coming quarters to be much better and robust both on financial and operational aspect. On the asset quality front, too, we have showcased improving trajectory and have delivered a quarter-on-quarter improvement of 90 basis points on our on-book GNPA, which stood at 2.4% as of June 2020. We had a year-on-year improvement by 150 basis points with on-book NNPA at minus 0.8%. Going forward, we continue to remain focused on achieving steady growth without hampering our portfolio quality. PCR for the quarter was 130% against 60% in Q1 FY20. Let me go through the financial and operational highlights of our company. Our AUM has seen a growth of 14%, which stands at rupees 8,119 crores as compared to 7,139 crores a year ago. Assigned portfolio is rupees 2,009 crores and BC book with IndusInd Bank at rupees 519 crores. As of June 20, we have a customer base of 33.20 lakh customers. Our disbursement stood at rupees 54 crores for the quarter. Disbursement growth was severely impacted due to nationwide lockdown during major part of the quarter, which caused halt in operational and financial activities. Also, disbursements were majorly done to existing customers with strong repayment history. Net interest income for quarter 1 FY21 stood at rupees 150 crores as against 199 crores for quarter 1 FY20. Our pre-provisioning operating profit stood at rupees 50 crores and PAT for Q1 FY21 stood at rupees 13 crores. Our cost to income ratio stood at 63.34%, primarily impacted due to lower income in the quarter due to COVID-19. while our OpEx to GLP ratio stood at 4.7% as against 6.1% in Q1 FY20 on standalone basis. As of 30th June 2020, our ROA stood at 0.72%, whereas ROE stood at 3.52%. Coupled with halt in business operation due to lockdown restrictions, our operating costs have gone up, which have impacted our return ratios. However, with going ahead, expect our costs to normalize and reap significant benefits to improve our profitability and return matrix. With each passing month, we have been seeing an improving trajectory in our collection efficiency, as majority of our borrowers are engaged in essential services. Thus, recoveries from them are expected to be much faster. The collection efficiency trends are April 3%, May 17%, June 62%, July 85%, and August 85%. Our gross GNPA at an AUM level stood at 2.4%, while we have made adequate provision of 2.2% to bring our net NPAs to 0.2% from 1.1% as of Q1 FY20. Our net NPA has seen a reduction of 19 basis points on a year-to-year basis, while on a sequential basis it has come down by 60 basis points. On-book NPA are at minus 0.8%. An update on moratorium. As of 30th June 2020, 11% of our borrowers have opted for full moratorium, while we have activated 89% of clients and 98% of centers. Our well-diverse presence across 23 states and UTs have helped us emerge as a strong pan-India microfinance player in the industry. As on 30th June 2020, 96.4% of our districts have less than 1% of portfolio exposure, which we aim to bring it down further in the coming times. We continue to be one of the leading microfinance players in terms of customer base, well-penetrated branch network across states with 76% rural exposure. Our well-thought diversified customer base has helped us leverage our ideas of cross-sell products. Until now, we have been able to disburse loans under the product financing category close to rupees 100 crores. Portfolio quality. We have believed in continuing our growth trajectory without compromising on portfolio quality. Our strong internal control coupled with stringent audit processes have helped us monitor our portfolio quality on a regular basis. We have made COVID-related additional provisioning of rupees 90 crore, which is 2% of our on-book portfolio. Our team constantly monitors all our back-end support for credit appraisal, quality, and customer support along with post-disbursement monitoring through our centralized shared services, which ensures uniform processes across all our branches. On liquidity and capitalization, our capital base has been strong with a CRAR of 31.09% and well above the regulatory requirements. We have a healthy Tier 1 capital comprising of 23.67%. Our ratings are CARE A- stable and ICRA A- stable for long term, CARE A1 and ICRA A1 for short term credit. Liquidity has never been a barrier for us as the company has access to a diversified lender base with 61 active lenders. Leverage now is 3.6x. We continue to maintain a healthy balance sheet liquidity with rupees 1,652 crores of surplus funds as on 30th June 2020. In addition to the above liquidity, we have undrawn sanctions of rupees 1,006 crores as on 30th June 2020 with additional sanctions in advanced stages. Our structurally positive AUM also adds to our advantage. The rights issue will add rupees 120 crore to the capital base. We have received rupees 15 per share along with the application aggregating to rupees 30 crores. An update on our subsidiaries. We are looking forward to growing our secured lending portfolio through our subsidiaries, thus diversifying risk while achieving a better product mix to achieve the next leg of growth. Satin Housing Finance Limited has now reached an AUM of 144 crores and having a presence across 4 states with 1,305 customers. Satin Housing Finance Limited has 100% retail book comprising of 87% affordable housing loans and 13% of LAP. Satin Finserv Limited, our MSME arm, has an AUM of rupees 118 crores. Total equity stands at rupees 102.5 crores. SFL's business aims to focus on secured retail MSME lending, wholesale lending to small NBFC MFI and others. SFL2 has been brought in-house software now. Our business correspondent services under Taraashna Financial Services has reached an AUM of 677 crores. As of 30th June 2020, the company operates through 208 branches, has more than 3.6 lakh active loan clients. Thank you so much. With this, I would like to open the floor for questions.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, we will now begin the question-answer session. Anyone who wishes to ask a question may press star and 1 on their touchtone telephone. If you wish to remove yourself from the question queue, you may press star and 2. Participants are requested to use handset while asking a question. Ladies and gentlemen, we will wait for a moment while the question queue assembles. We take the first question from the line of Dhwanil Savla, individual investor. Please go ahead. Mr. Savla, your line is unmuted. You may please go ahead with your question. As there is no response from the current participant, we take the next question from the line of Agastya Dave from CEO Capital. Please go ahead.
Thank you for the opportunity, sir. Sir, am I right in doing the following calculation that if 85% is the collection rate, 11% is the morat, so effectively you are at 96% collection rates if you like ignore the fact that some people in morat actually won't be paying. Can I add these two numbers and then say that 4% people who are not in morat are not paying? Is that a...
No, so the way we have calculated the number is whatever is our monthly demand for the month of July and August, we have been able to collect 85% of that.
So, okay. So let me ask this directly rather than calculating it. So, as of now, in the non-morat...
Sorry, 1 minute. Let me clarify. Both are two different things. So when we say 85% of our collection means that month's demand and collection is about 85%. 11% who have taken full moratorium is that they have not even paid a single installment for the moratorium period. So that which is the way we are calculating and which is the way it is being shown that 11% of the customers, since they have not paid any single installment, are taking complete moratorium.
So that's not even included in the demand for any of these months, right?
No, it will be.
Demand it is included in the demand. So demand is for all the customers, whether they have paid, not paid. And against that, we have been... And this is the month-to-date figure, not for a particular week or day.
Got it. Thanks for that clarification. Sir, another question. So if I look at the morat book and if I look at the non-morat book, what would you say would be the upper bound to the gross NPAs that you can expect? I listened to your interview on CNBC and you were saying that you expect 250 to 300 basis points of credit costs. So can you just tie up everything? If you can bifurcate that into the morat book and non-morat book, what are the trends you are seeing? And another related question, you said that 11% of the people, you are defining that as those set of people who have not even paid a single month's worth of repayments, right? So, those people who have initially, who are part of morat but are no longer part of morat, what is the asset quality looking like in that cohort?
So the way I have defined it as we look at the history. So when we started the lockdown and when we started our collection, people who are not paid started from about 30-35%, which is now down to 11% who have not paid a single installment. And this is being cleared off on a day-to-day basis. So technically, what we are clearing off is out of about close to about 4.5 lakh customers. We have people who are paying out of this about 6,000 to 7,000 customers on a daily basis who are now coming back and have started repaying their installments. That's the reason why I said that from out of 4 lakh customers, which is 11%, every day about 6,000 to 7,000 customers have started out of these customers started paying their installment. So that is the reason why I said that out of this 11%, the final tally which we feel would be close to 2.5 to 3%.
Right, and the non-morat book is behaving very nicely.
Yeah.
Right. Sir, I have further questions, but I'll go back in the queue. I'll take it next time. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Shripal Doshi from Equirus Securities. Please go ahead.
Hello, sir. Good morning, and thank you for giving me the opportunity. So, could you please throw some light on the state-wise collections that we would be having for some of the larger states, like for us, during, like, say, versus the 85% collection efficiency that we have for the entire book?
So if when you look at 85% for the entire India, for our heavier states, which are, let's say, UP and Bihar and Punjab and MP. So UP, till our last days of August, was clocking close to about 100% plus in terms of their demand and collection for that month. The lower states which were there, which have a very small portfolio of ours, was typically Assam and Maharashtra, where we have a very small thing. But all the bigger states, Bihar and all, they were clocking 95% plus from there. And UP, as I said, was clocking 100% plus.
Okay. So just one doubt. I mean, so if when you are saying UP was 100 plus, I mean, that is also because the customer would be paying some of the older EMIs also. That is why it is higher than the demand, right? But if you were to calculate only for that particular month's EMI versus that particular month's demand, what would that number be for UP, Bihar, and Punjab?
No, so that is what I'm saying. For that month's demand and that month's collection, UP was 100%. So whatever the demand for that month was there, we collected 100% of that. Now, it could be a fallout of the previous installments also, but for that particular month, the demand and collection was 100% for UP.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so for Bihar?
Bihar is close to, I think, 85 to 87%.
Okay.
Sorry, it's about 90%. Sorry, it's about 90% plus.
In the month of August, right?
August, that's right.
Yeah. And so, I want to understand, like, how, well, like, what is, like, the morat book that we have of 11%, that would be from what sort of geographies? Like, would that be, like, if you can throw some light on those states or those geographies?
So no granular detail as such, but it is spread all across everywhere. So it's not like, one state could be significantly higher than the other, but, this is the total what we've got.
Okay. But it would not be from states like UP or Bihar for us. I mean, because we are seeing collection efficiency.
Everybody will have some representation in it, so it's not like, kisi state mein kam ho, but thankfully UP and Bihar have lesser amount, UP has lesser numbers, as compared to that,
Mm-hmm. So how are we seeing the collection trend, or say the overall effort that we need to put in states like Assam or Odisha, which were already seeing stress even before COVID happened? So what sort of, your interaction or your sort of understanding is there in those geographies?
See, the geographies remain, whatever has happened because of the agitation and the floods earlier and the cyclone and everything, after the COVID and everything, it is probably behaving in a much better fashion, that because a lot of our clients who were in PAR 90, they have started paying. Clients who were there in the buckets of 1 to 90 have started paying. So I would say it's a very positive sign both for Odisha and Assam, looking across, post the COVID,
Okay. So one last question. So what is our write-off strategy? Like, after how many sort of DPD do we deploy writing of the loan book?
So, our policy is that we decide it on a case-to-case basis, and wherever we feel that the chances of recovery are not there, we write it off. And over a period of time, we are taking aggressive stand wherever there is a remotest chance that the customers, etc., are not reachable and all. So that is why you will see, our gross NPA number are consistently coming down, especially if you see the slide 35 in our presentation. So our on-book gross NPA has come down from 4.4% in September 19 to about 2.4%. So we are writing it off wherever we feel that the chances of recovery are less. So this is the policy we have adopted, and you will see a consistent drop in gross NPA over a period of time.
Sure. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we take the next question, a reminder to the participants, please limit your question to 2 per participant. You may come back in the question queue if you have a follow-up. The next question is from the line of Nidhesh Jain from Investec Capital. Please go ahead.
Just one clarification on collection efficiency data, sir, 85%. In the numerator, if we take just collection for the month, what would be that number of collection efficiency?
Sorry, I didn't get your question, but the way we have calculated, as we explained earlier, that whatever is the total collection for the month, that divided by the total demand of all the customers, whether they have paid or not paid for that month.
Mr. Nitesh Jain, I'm so sorry to interrupt, but there's a lot of disturbance coming from your audio, sir. We are unable to hear you well.
Yeah. Is it better now?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. So I was asking that if we just take the collection for the month and not the overdue collections from the previous month, what would be the number corresponding to 85% that we have disclosed?
That is not the right way of looking at it, because practically the collection was almost zero in the month of April, and also people will first pay for April, then for May, then for June. So at some point in time, every customer has missed some installment during April, May. So that is not the right way of looking at the number, because people will not be able to pay everything in one go for last 5-6 months. We feel that the right way of looking at it is what is the demand for the month from all the customers, whether they are paying, not paying, versus what we have collected, and this is what we have shown here, which is 85%.
Sure. And if you can share the data, what percentage of customers in the month of August have paid full EMI, what percentage of customers have paid partial EMI, and what percentage of customers have not paid anything in the month of August?
So most of the customers are paying full EMI. So either we are collecting or not collecting, in case that is a question. So we are not generally collect partial repayments. So whosoever is paying the full installment.
And that number will be 85%, right? Then 85% of the customers have paid full EMI in the month of August.
So we have 11% of the customers who have not paid us anything during moratorium period. So broadly means there are very few customers who are paying more than one installment. So people are trying to pay whatever is due. So broadly, 86-87% of the customer have paid 85% of the collection is a broad number.
Okay. Thanks, sir. That's it from my side.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Ritesh Gandhi from Discovery Capital. Please go ahead.
Sir, look, EUM is up about 50%.
Mr. Ritesh Gandhi, I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's a lot of disturbance from your audio, sir. We are not able to hear you well.
Is it clear? Hi, is it clear? Hello?
Hello, sir.
Can you hear me? Is this clear?
Sir, I'm sorry, but the audio is still not very clear.
I'll just go back to line. That's fine.
If you can hear me, you can just dial in from a different number and rejoin the queue. Thank you. We take the next question from the line of Deepak Poddar from Sapphire Capital. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, sir, for the opportunity. So I wanted to understand more on the credit cost now since the high credit cost, like we have done additional provision of 90 crores and credit cost this quarter has kind of normalized. So any comment on going forward? How do you see your credit cost in coming quarters and FY22 when it gets normalized? So do you expect a higher credit cost base, or some comment on that would be quite helpful.
Look, as I indicated earlier, see, right now, if you really look at the pool of technically the credit cost which you're looking at is somebody who's not paid us, in the last 6 months, technically is what we are looking at the larger pool. But in spite of the fact that, we have a larger pool of, let's say, 11%, out of that we said that 4 lakh customers, we are getting, installments from about 7,000 odd customers on a daily basis. Our sense is once this pool gets finished off, technically, because rest others are paying. So whatever they're paying, if somebody paid us 3 or 4 installments, he's paying the 5th or the 6th installment. Our own sense is that the credit cost technically, which I had mentioned earlier, during the day in my interviews also, is that this 11% will finally boil down to this is what our estimate is. It could also possibly go down lesser than that, but we feel that about 2.5% is where we are looking at. Maybe credit cost right now, but FY22 definitely once the normalcy returns and everything goes back to this thing, which we hope would be being optimist about everything, the credit cost would be lower than about 2.5% also.
No. So basically, pre-COVID, I think we were credit cost were in the level of around 1.5% kind of that. So do you intend to go back to that kind of level?
See, we would definitely, but it again depends on the external circumstances, how this, the pandemic is really going to stabilize at what time, So we are 6 months, 7 months now into the pandemic, but there are no real signs where we can say that, it's back to pre-COVID levels. Definitely, yes, the collections are improving. Disbursement has started improving, but my own sense is another 6 to 8 months is going to take before we finally settle down and say, okay, fine, we're back to the pre-COVID levels, So that's the reason why I gave you an additional heads up on maybe another 1% higher this thing for FY22. But it could be at the pre-COVID levels also. It all depends, how this thing pans out.
Fair enough. I understand. That's it from my side. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Malvika Tandon from SBI One Capital. Please go ahead.
Hi, thanks for the question. I have two questions for you. The first question is, as I understand that Satin has slowed down the disbursement due to COVID. So we would like to understand when Satin is going to start increasing the disbursement. And the second question is regarding collection efficiency and NPL. How will Satin's collection efficiency and NPL compare to the industry or other competitors? Thank you.
So in the case of disbursements, I think, it is increasing on a monthly basis. But I would say that we are not still back to the pre-COVID levels of the disbursement. But we are seeing an uptake. Technically, if you look at the disbursement in the June quarter, it was about 50 odd crores. But we've increased our disbursement 3 times more than what it was in the June quarter for July and August, if you really look at it. And maybe another couple of months, before we are fully back to the pre-COVID days of our disbursements. So that's one. In terms of collection efficiency, I think, what I can understand, I probably cannot comment on what my peers would be, but I think everybody is probably in the same range, give or take a couple of % up and down. But our own sense is that this is where the collection efficiency is for the entire sector, basically. It is, I think, range bound between 80 to 90% is where the range bound is. This is what my own estimate is. I probably could be wrong, but this is what my estimate is for the other players also.
Alice? Alice, can you hear us? Yes. All right. Okay. So I understand that the estimated collection efficiency is 80 to 90%. How about the NPL?
NPL right now, I think we cannot have a correct, NPL figure to be very honest. Again, as I stated earlier, this 11% moratorium book, which we have, we'll see how it pans out in the next 2 months from now, September and October, are 2 months when we are really looking at it, how does it pan out. Our sense is we will have a fair estimate of a correct NPL maybe in a couple of months, but not right now. I think, this is what's it. But on a longer basis plan in FY21, what we stated earlier, I think, it be range bound between 2.5% to 3%, at the maximum, the NPL levels.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Rahul Kicha from Multi-Act. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity, sir. Sir, I wanted to understand on disbursement. So, right now, are you giving any additional loans to your existing customers to restart their business?
So what we're giving is a Pragati loan. Pragati loan is only being given to a customer who has repaid all his installments, and he needs money to refinance his income generating activities. So it is being given to existing customers and only to those customers who have fully repaid their installments. And if they have any installment which is not repaid, we're not extending a loan to them.
Okay, so basically you mean that customer needs to be current as on date of disbursement?
Absolutely correct.
Okay, and what percentage of your customers you would have given these loans to?
I don't have a number, but in terms of, I think we've done disbursement worth about
54 crores in
54 crores in June, and July, August, I probably cannot give you a number because of being a listed entity, but it's at least 3 to 4 times more than what we've given in June. So that's an indication,
Okay. And sir, can you talk a bit about the geographies which are still lagging in terms of collection efficiency trends right now in post Q1?
See, I probably will not be able to give you a fair comment on this, because if the earlier geographies were lagging behind in the COVID-19 pre-COVID levels, they are probably at the same level where they are. So if you look at deterioration which you feel that would happen to any geography, that has not happened. So whatever the efficiencies were pre-COVID levels, the efficiencies are in fact the same, or in fact maybe slightly better than what it was pre-COVID levels.
Okay. And sir, specifically on Assam, is it possible for you to give the collection efficiency for Assam?
Collection efficiency for Assam would be close to about 65% plus.
Okay, and that is showing improvement?
Yes, that is showing improvement. That's what I said earlier, that even in DPTs 1 to 90 and 90 plus DPTs, people have started repaying now post the lockdown easing off.
Okay. And sir, any geographies where you are facing any difficulties from local political interference or any disturbance of that sort?
That's a natural course of business. I think these happens across everywhere. Nothing which is significant which is impacting our collection. Otherwise, this average would not have come out if there would have been any particular state which there. But these are normal, our business. Business hiccups which we always face. So nothing significant which probably can affect our collection efficiencies.
All right, sir. Thank you. Thank you for taking my question.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Keshav from Raxin Investors. Please go ahead.
Hi, morning, sir. Thanks for taking my question. Sir, I have a sort of like a big picture question. Sir, if I look at the data for past 6 years, I see that we have made around 470 CR and we have lost about the same. And if I compare that to one of our competitors, Credit Access, we have lost 1/3 the amount of money they've made. So, sir, what are the structural differences by the way we are acting, by the way we are running the business, and like the way forward? How do you see could be improvements, structural improvements specifically, which could lead to a better return that way, so that we don't lose as much money?
I think it is not fair to discuss one competitor on a public call. While everybody has their own strategy of growth and this thing. Some of the key factors I can speak in general, not about our direct comparison to one specific institution. It all depends on the capital structure, geographical spread, growth strategy, so on and so forth. So I think it is not fair to discuss our number with Credit Access on this forum. We can do a detailed analysis, have separate discussions, but broadly, we have to see how our numbers have grown over a period of time. We were more impacted in demonetization as compared to some of our peers or industry in general. But if you see our performance over a period of time post demonetization, at some point in time, 70% of our portfolio was impacted. We had large exposure in UP, Punjab, Uttarakhand, MP, etc., which was severely impacted. And then we have come out of that, and the portfolio is growing. We have structurally corrected things, changes our system, processes, technology, so on and so forth. And all set to, so to say, grow. Our gross NPA numbers are coming down. Our provision coverage ratios are improving over a period of time. So these are, I think you have to see we are going in that direction.
So if I may add just maybe the big picture, the way you said it, I can give you the big picture. The big picture is that in spite of whatever jabbings we've had in terms of demonetization, stamp agitation, pandemic and everything, you look at our numbers, collection efficiency, we are probably also amongst the best right now. In terms of our NPA provisioning, we did lose so much of money, but we've still been able to bounce back and come back onto the keel, So that is what the big picture is that in spite of the fact that we've been hurt the most, for us the comeback and the bounce back has been far more better and bigger than the rest of the industry. That's the only thing which I can probably give you as a big picture.
And we are diversifying into housing finance business, MSME business, where as on today we are investing. The returns will take some time to come, but we feel that it is important to diversify the portfolio. Our housing finance has taken good shape now, growing, almost breaking it quarter-on-quarter basis. It's a long-term business, but we feel that these kind of investments are important and essential from a long-term growth perspective. So that also in short term impacts the return ratios, but are important and we feel is an important strategy.
All right, sir. That's really reassuring. But sir, the reason why I'm not trying to draw any parallels between competitors as such, but I'm just trying to understand because sir, we are again in a situation that is unprecedented. It could be like we have navigated through demonetization and other crises, but still, this is a very, very tough situation for everyone. And if I see, then like I have to sort of understand what is not going our way with a competitor, because we lose more money on a rainy day than them. And it is concerning, especially because of the COVID, how it has happened and how it's panned out. So, sir, how do you see yourself navigating through this crisis?
So let me give it to you with my experience of 30 years in this industry. We've navigated more crises than anybody else. That's a reassurance which you probably can have. Maybe you should probably look at that. Maybe in not in a silo, but in the complete thing. We've navigated at least 5 times more the crisis which anybody else in our peers would have done it. So when this COVID or this crisis is there, basically, our only way to tell you is that remain optimist, and as we are optimists to navigate this crisis again, not by losing money, but by navigating it far more better than I hope. I won't say that I will put it against someone else, but we will navigate it much better than anticipated by probably a lot of the people.
All right, sir. That's it from me.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Agastya Dave from CEO Capital. Please go ahead.
Thank you for the follow-up, sir. Sir, could you, you partially answered this question, but in terms of trends in NII and in terms of trends in GNPA, so can you just give a broad idea if there are no further disruptions, no nationwide lockdowns or something like that, some Six Sigma event, how do you see those panning out? The NII and the gross NPA. Will we see a dip next quarter and then recovery after that, or will we see continuous recovery? And also on the gross NPA side, when do you see maximum spike happening? And can you also correlate the gross NPA with the net NPA number that you have? So as of now, you have more provisions. I think this is the first time I've seen on your balance sheet a higher provision than on book gross NPAs. But where do you see the net NPAs peaking at? And then subsequently, what would be your policy on provisions? Because when the demon happened, you carried the gross NPA, higher gross NPA number for a long time. I grant you that there were recoveries. But what is your sense this time? Will you do an upfront provisioning or carry them like this?
So let me first answer on the margin. So we have a 10% margin prescribed by RBI. We are working broadly on the same. Our lending rates are not drastically different than industry. So we are not seeing any pressure from that perspective from the market. So margins will remain intact at broadly 10% level, which is permitted. So there we don't see any pressure. On the gross NPA, as you can see the trend, it is consistently coming down, and we have taken an aggressive approach in terms of write-off. Wherever we feel that there is lesser chance of recovery, we are, so to say, writing it off, but making effort on the ground to recover. We collected around 19 odd crore last year out of the written off amount also. But from accounting and reporting perspective, we have taken an aggressive stand in terms of write-off. As we said on the call earlier, that we are anticipating roughly 2.5-3% kind of a credit cost, because of COVID and for some time. But going forward in a stable state, we feel that credit cost of 1 to 1.5% should be there on a stable state. And to take care of that, we have worked on that over a period of time on our OPEX, which has come down consistently over a period of time. We reduced it by roughly 0.5% last year. We feel that we still have a lot of scope to bring it down. So even if there is a little bit of spike in overall credit cost structurally, that will be offset by improvement in operating efficiency. And to that extent, I think we'll be able to absorb that. But our credit cost, considering all the system processes, improvement that we have done over a period of last 1 year or so, we don't see that as drastically different from industry averages.
Sir, my question on NII was not with respect to the spread. Spread, I understand, is at 10%, but the absolute number itself, because the disbursements were low and we don't have long duration products, right? These are not multi-year loans, so there is a natural run-off period also. So I was just wondering, the NII number, absolute number, will we see a dip next quarter and then a recovery, or will we see recovery from now onwards? I was also trying to understand the operating deleverage which may play out over the next couple of quarters. That is why my question was more on the absolute NII number.
So, we are going conservative in terms of disbursement. We are sitting on good amount of liquidity, but considering the market situation, we want to see how the things are panning out before we sort of go back to normal disbursement. So probably there may be some impact for next quarter or two, but things are very, very dynamic and may change with all the efforts done by the government and RBI in terms of supporting the industry. Means we are getting mixed response how fast the recovery will happen in the overall economy, and then we'll take a call accordingly. But yes, it'll have some impact for a quarter or two before we can say that the disbursements are back to normal, and to that extent there will be some impact on absolute NIM numbers.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Shripal Doshi from Equirus Securities. Please go ahead.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for giving me the opportunity again. So my question is on the say 11% of our customers are under moratorium, and if we see 76% of our customers are in the rural geography. So any split between, say, what percentage will be from rural and what percentage will be in the urban geography, and what sort of customer profiles would this be like? What would be their say sources of income? If you can give some color on that.
See, if I give you a very true picture of it as 76% or 78%, which we say officially is within the municipal limits, what we call as complete rural. But if you look at the balance 24 or 26%, that is, if not pretty rural, it is like a semi-urban kind of a this thing, but still has a lot of rural settings to it. So when we look at our complete book, it is practically, if you really look at me, if I look at from, not from the technical standpoint of view, but I look at from the operational standpoint of view, practically about 98% of our book is all rural. So when I do a bifurcation of 11%, this is technically the 100% would be, if I would give you the color of operationally looking at it, it'll be all rural. There's no urban space in it, So I won't talk of a major town like a Delhi or a Mumbai or even a town like Lucknow or Kanpur be included in that, because we don't work even in the surroundings of that. We work only on the surroundings of all these major towns also. So if, let's say for example, if you are present anywhere in, we say Lucknow, it is not main Lucknow, it is going to be the periphery of Lucknow which extends into the semi-urban and kind of a rural setting, So for you to really look at it operationally, it is about 100%, all rural settings. So 11% is practically all rural, which we are saying.
So sir, then what would be the customer profile that have got impacted on their sources of income, and which is why they are availing more to you?
So, there could be any profile over there, but it is, if you look at the baseline again, the baseline is again agri and agri-related activities. But there could be smaller, small cottage industries, which probably, homemade industry, which would be there, which could be impacted. But no bifurcation which we've been able to do to say that, okay, fine, whether this industry has been repaying or maybe the customer belongs to this industry is not been able to repay. I don't think so it'll also be maybe a certain extent, maybe a behavioral pattern also which could be there. A customer, even though having a cash flow, would not be paying during the moratorium period. Let me wait for the moratorium period to end and then I'll start repaying, So, you can have a handle on everything which is probably there. But overall, I think the handle should probably be looked at that, okay, 11% is the complete moratorium book, and 6,000 to 7,000 out of that 4 lakh customers have started repaying on a daily basis. So that's a heartening sign which we should look at.
Okay. Thank you, sir. So one last question was on our OPEX front. So sir, if you see like industry level, the OPEX upon AUM is broadly in the range of 4 to 4.5%, whereas we are almost 150 to 200 basis point higher. And I think that is what is reflecting in our lower ROA profile also. So how do we see like that moving down? What are the kind of strategies that we are sort of implementing to bring that down?
See, two factors which you have to consider when you look at OPEX also. We are practically far more diversified in terms of geography and states as compared to, maybe a large part of our peers in the industry. So that also has maybe a bearing on the OPEX cost as compared to what you say 4.5 or whatever the ratio is, But we've gradually been bringing it down, and whatever measures we've taken on terms of technology enhancements, in terms of, bringing our operational efficiency to a level, I think, we've been able to achieve whatever is, downward trends we've been seeing in our OPEX cost, And going forward, all these processes and things, both on technology and operational efficiency, I can't probably list out granular details, but yes, we are working on all these details, and we'll have lesser, amount of OPEX to GLP, now when we go forward. And that has constantly been demonstrated in our quarter on quarter if you look at for the last 1 year or so.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Shubhankar Oja from SKS Capital. Please go ahead.
Yes, hi, thanks. So basically wanted to know the time frame for this rights issue to be, when does it become fully paid up, and when does it become tradable?
Partly paid would be tradable. I think, once we finish off the allotment, which probably would happen, maybe my sense is another couple of days. We get a window of about 1 year to, get the fully, all the calls in, and including the application which has come in now. So we've got a window of 1 year. Let's see, but, we can say that probably it'll take us about a year when this fully gets, the money gets fully in there.
Tentatively about a year, you said, right?
Yeah, that's the window which we get, so it could be earlier, but that's the window which we have.
Sure. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Vanit Savla from Individual Investor. Please go ahead.
Hi, sir. I actually tried asking a question earlier. So I had a two-part question. Firstly, the rights issue which we are making, what is its impact going to be on our tier 1 capital, and thereby are we being able to disperse more than what we will be if we are not done the rights issue? And secondly, going by the current GNPA and net NPA trend, is there a vision which we have for our, say, FY22 or maybe beyond that, wherein we can get this the gross NPA figure probably below 1%?
So I can't get your second question. The first question you talked about the impact on tier 1 capital. This will be about 8-9%. So our tier 1 capital will go about 8 to 9%. So that is the impact which is going to have on the CAR.
Okay. My second question was, is there any chance that our gross NPA numbers can go below 1% in the FY22 or 23, or is it too far-fetched to look at right now?
I think it's slightly, so to say, far-fetched because, as we have shown it on slide 35 in our presentation, our gross NPA number are consistently coming down and our provision coverage ratio is increasing, so we are 130% provided as on today. We take a call as soon as we feel that the chances of recovery are not there and we write it off. So we'll adopt this strategy, but in case we are making a provision, that should give comfort to investors is our thought process. So we are, so to say, consistently following the rules and taking a conservative approach in our provisioning policy and write-off policy, and we'll go ahead with the same strategy.
And to increase just to add, so we've increased our, provision coverage ratio this time, as somebody said that, they had never seen this kind of aggressive provisioning. So we are on that course. But the only answer which I can give you, if things stabilize and we are back to normalcy, I think, we'll have a far more better look at the numbers, rather than, having a say of it right now. So if stability returns, definitely I think the numbers will also improve significantly.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that was the last question for today. I would now like to hand the conference back to the management for their closing comments.
I take this opportunity to thank everyone for joining this call, and I hope we've been able to answer all your queries. However, should you feel you want to discuss something else, you can all get in touch with me. My name is Aditi Singh. I look after the investor relations for Satin Creditcare. My details are there on the presentation as well. And you can also get in touch with Strategic Growth Advisors, who are our IR advisors. Thank you.